I want you to try something for a second. Just imagine all of your thoughts, like every single one of them, as physical objects.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is a lot of objects.
Right. Picture them swirling rapidly inside your mind, like a literal tornado of sticky notes and photographs, half-remembered conversations, grocery lists, all of it.
Honestly, it's an incredibly chaotic image.
Mm.
But frankly, it's a highly accurate representation of raw sensory input.
Yeah, exactly. If you actually visualize the sheer volume of data you process every minute, it really begs a serious question.
Which is?
How is it possible that your brain doesn't just crash? I mean, how does it move from one thought to the next in an organized fashion without you completely losing your grip on reality?
Because the volume of processing happening at any given millisecond is just staggering. It really is.
It's wild. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to uncover the invisible filing system of the mind.
Yes, the mental architecture.
Right. We are going to figure out how your brain manages that massive tornado of information and understand why we so often find ourselves operating on complete autopilot.
Which is something we all do, constantly.
Oh, absolutely. And to do this, we are pulling from a foundational text. Specifically, we'll be looking at section 7.1 of chapter 7 from Psychology to E.
It is a phenomenal text for this specific question, because it breaks down the architecture of human thought into its structural components. It shows us the literal mechanics of how we process the world.
And since this is literally a psychology textbook we're jumping into, let's set up a bit of a dynamic for this deep dive.
Okay, I like where this is going.
I'm going to act as the inquisitive student today, and you can put on the lecturer hat.
Consider the hat firmly on.
Perfect. So my job is to ask the questions, push back when things get abstract, and make sure we keep this grounded.
And I will gladly accept the lecturer role. I mean, our shared goal here is to guide you, the listener, through this material so you can actually observe these mechanisms operating in your own daily life.
Okay, let's start with the practical reality of waking up in the morning, your eyes open.
The alarm goes off.
Right. And the very first thing that happens is your brain starts running the tape, you start thinking about errands. In what order should you run them?
Should you go to the bank, the dry cleaners, maybe the grocery store first?
Exactly. Can you get these things done before work, or do they need to wait until the evening?
And that immediate onset of mental planning brings us to the core definition of what we are studying today in section 7.1, which is cognition.
Cognition. Okay.
Simply put, cognition is thinking. But the textbook is careful to note that it is much broader than just pondering a deep philosophical question.
Right. It's not just sitting under a tree having deep thoughts.
Exactly. Cognition encompasses all the processes associated with perception, knowledge, problem-solving, judgment, language, and memory.
So the brain is just relentlessly active. But when I'm lying in bed figuring out when to buy milk, my mind isn't just looking at a sterile logical checklist.
No, it's a lot messier than that.
Yeah, it feels like it's synthesizing external information, like the sound of the rain outside with my internal emotions and my past memories of, like, hating being caught in the rain.
And that synthesis is the crucial mechanism of cognition. I mean, your brain is essentially a prediction engine.
A prediction engine.
Yes. To figure out the grocery store problem, it's actively filtering external sensory data alongside internal emotional states to output a single coherent thought.
Okay, let's unpack this. If the brain is doing all this complex processing, synthesizing sensations with emotions and memories, why don't we feel completely overwhelmed?
That's a great question. And it comes down to what Kahneman's 2011 research, which is cited in the text, reveals. Much of our cognitive experience relies on unconscious work.
Unconscious, so it's happening behind the scenes.
Right. The brain simply cannot afford to let you be consciously aware of all that synthesis. We only experience the final organized conscious thoughts.
But why not? If my brain is doing all this incredibly complex work, why is it actively hiding it from my conscious mind?
It's all about energy conservation.
Energy, like calories.
Exactly. The brain makes up about 2% of human body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of our energy.
Wait, 20%, just for the brain?
Yeah. So if you had to consciously process every single sensory input, cross-reference it with every relevant memory, and weigh every emotional response, just to decide whether to get out of bed,
I'd be exhausted before I even stood up.
you would exhaust your caloric energy reserves almost instantly. Kahneman's work highlights that the brain utilizes cognitive ease. It offloads the heavy lifting to the unconscious background, so you only have to deal with the final result.
Okay, that makes sense. It sounds like managing the RAM on a computer or a smartphone.
That's a perfect analogy.
Like if I open 100 apps at once, the processor overheats and the battery drains in 10 minutes. The operating system has to forcefully suppress background apps like the sensory data and the messy emotional synthesis so that the one app I actually need to look at runs smoothly.
That analogy maps perfectly onto the neuroscience. You only experience the final, organized, conscious thought on the screen. The exhausting synthesis happens completely off stage.
That brings up a massive question for me as the student, though.
Fire away.
If the brain is keeping this background tornado hidden and prioritizing cognitive ease to save energy, how is it actually organizing the data? Where is it storing the information so it can pull that final thought to the screen so quickly?
To manage that staggering amount of information efficiently, your mind has developed what the textbook describes as a mental file cabinet.
A mental file cabinet.
Yes, and inside this cabinet, you have millions of individual files.
Yeah.
In psychology, these files are called concepts.
Concepts. So the concept is the actual folder holding related data together.
Precisely. Concepts are groupings of linguistic information, images, ideas, or memories. They are the big ideas generated by observing specific details and combining them into cognitive structures.
Okay, so how do we build them?
Well, these concepts are informed by our semantic memory, which is essentially our foundational knowledge of words and facts. You use these concept files to instantly recognize the relationships among different elements of your experiences.
I want to test this to make sure I'm grasping the boundaries of what a concept can be. A concept file can be concrete, right? Like, I have a file for birds.
Absolutely.
And inside that folder, the brain stores feathers, wings, beaks, and flying.
Right, all the observable traits.
But I must also have abstract concept files, like a folder for justice, or since we're diving into psychology, a folder for Piaget's stages of development.
The file cabinet holds both. You have concept files for massive abstract political philosophies, and you have concept files for the specific way your grandmother smells.
Oh, wow.
They organize every single interaction you have with the world.
But wait, if I have millions of these folders in the cabinet, how does the brain pull the right one without slowing down the operating system?
What do you mean?
Like, if you say the word dog, how do I instantly know what you mean without having to sort through a million files of different animals? That seems incredibly energy intensive.
It would be, which is why the brain uses a brilliant sorting strategy. To identify these concepts instantly, your brain relies on prototypes.
Prototypes.
A prototype is the absolute best representation of a concept. It is the definitive reference point.
How does the brain select what gets to be the prototype? Does it just pick the first one I ever saw?
Often, yes. The textbook provides a really clear example here. If your very first pet was a golden retriever, there is a very high probability that a golden retriever becomes your neural prototype for the category of dog.
Okay, so it's deeply personal.
It is, but it's also about mathematical averaging. Over time, as you encounter hundreds of dogs, your brain averages their features. Most have 4 legs, a tail, and fur. The prototype becomes this idealized average representation.
So I don't have time to review the entire folder of canine variations. My brain just glances at the label on the front of the file, and that label is a picture of a golden retriever. It's a massive shortcut.
It is the ultimate efficiency mechanism. It saves your brain from having to reinvent the wheel every time you encounter a new object.
Okay, moving to the next logical step here. How do these files actually get created in the first place?
Well, it depends on the type of file.
Like, if I have a concept file for a dog and a concept file for an abstract idea like justice, are they built the same way? Are they learned through messy experience, or are they strictly defined by rules?
They are built differently, which brings us to a major distinction in Section 7.1. Concepts are divided into 2 distinct categories: natural concepts and artificial concepts.
Natural sounds like the messy experience side of the equation.
It is. Natural concepts are created organically through your experiences, and they can be developed from either direct or indirect exposure.
Give me an example.
The textbook uses a vivid example regarding snow. Let's say you live in Essex Junction, Vermont. You have had intense, direct experience with snow. You've shoveled 18 inches of fluffy snow. You know the physical sensation of the freezing temperature.
The smell of the cold air, the blinding brightness of the sun reflecting off of it.
Exactly. Your brain has physically processed the data. It's an immersive, multi-sensory concept file.
Right.
But contrast that with someone who has lived their entire life on the island of St. Vincent in the Caribbean. They have never felt the freezing temperature or touched a snowball.
Right. Their reality is totally different.
Yet they still have a fully formed concept of snow because they've seen it in movies or read about it in books. That is an indirect experience.
Oh, I see.
Whether built from freezing in Vermont or watching a film in the Caribbean, snow is a natural concept because your understanding is constructed entirely through observation.
Okay, so natural concepts are fluid. They're built on observation, which means my concept of snow might be slightly different from your concept of snow depending on our lives.
Got it.
But earlier you mentioned artificial concepts. If natural concepts are fluid, I assume artificial concepts are rigid.
Fundamentally rigid. An artificial concept is defined by a specific, unchangeable set of characteristics.
Like rules.
Exactly. Geometry provides the foundational examples here. A triangle always has 3 angles and 3 sides. A square always has 4 equal sides and right angles. The mathematical formula for area, length times width, is an artificial concept.
I want to push back on the word artificial here, because usually we use that word to mean something fake or synthetic.
Right, like artificial flavors.
Yeah, but in this context, it just means it's a rigid, rule-based building block that doesn't change based on my personal feelings.
That is the perfect distinction. It doesn't mean fake, it means mathematically or logically defined. The textbook points to research by Goldstone and Kirsten from 2003, who describe these artificial concepts as literal cognitive building blocks.
Building blocks.
Yes. You must understand the artificial concept of a square before you can learn the artificial concept of calculating its area. They combine to create wildly complex thoughts.
Why do we need both? Why can't the brain just rely on natural, experiential concepts?
Because natural concepts are subjective. If we want to build a bridge, my subjective natural concept of heavy and your subjective concept of strong won't keep the bridge from collapsing.
Huh, that is a very good point.
We need the rigid, artificial concepts of physics and mathematics to communicate complex, universal truths. They allow us to engage in complex thought without ambiguity.
That bridges perfectly into my next question. We have natural concepts built from life and artificial concepts built from strict rules. But knowing what a square is or knowing what snow feels like doesn't tell me how to interact with people or get through my day.
No, it doesn't.
How do these individual files connect together to dictate our real-world behavior in real time?
This brings us to the highest level of cognitive organization discussed in the section, the schema. Yes, the term was coined by Bartlett in 1932. A schema is a mental construct consisting of a cluster of related concepts.
Let's use the mental file cabinet analogy again. A schema would be like taking several different concept files, grouping them together, tying a string around them, and putting a master label on the bundle.
A master label that triggers an automatic sequence. Schemata, which is the plural of schema, are a method of organizing information that allows the brain to work at lightning speed.
So it makes the brain highly efficient.
Incredibly efficient. By clustering concepts, the brain doesn't have to analyze a situation from scratch. It just activates the schema and makes immediate assumptions. Let's look at 2 specific types, starting with the role schema.
Role schema, making assumptions about individuals.
Exactly. The textbook uses the example of a firefighter. If someone introduces themselves at a party as a firefighter, your brain instantly activates this firefighter schema.
And because my natural concept files for firefighters are built from news stories of rescues and movies, my brain immediately assumes this person is brave, selfless, and community-oriented.
You fill in the gaps without asking for evidence. This makes social processing incredibly fast. You know roughly how to interact with a firefighter versus, say, a stand-up comedian.
Right.
But the friction occurs because the assumption might be entirely inaccurate. Maybe this particular firefighter isn't brave at all. Maybe they took the job to pay bills while they study to become a children's librarian.
It's the brain prioritizing speed over accuracy. We don't have the energy to interrogate every single person's complex motivations, so we just run the role schema program.
Exactly.
And I assume we have these programs running for situations. It's not just people, right? Like, I feel myself go on complete autopilot the second I walk into a restaurant.
We absolutely do, and those are known as event schemata or cognitive scripts.
Cognitive scripts.
An event schema is a routine set of behaviors. It's a script your brain writes for how you are supposed to act in a given physical environment. Think about the specific routine when you walk into an elevator.
Oh man, it's completely scripted. The doors open, you step aside to let people out. You walk in, and you immediately pivot 180 degrees to face the doors, stare at the numbers, and avoid eye contact.
You don't consciously think about that sequence? You never step in and confidently face the back wall of the elevator?
Just imagining standing in a crowded elevator, facing the rear wall with my back to the doors. It genuinely gives me a physical feeling of anxiety. My skin crawls just thinking about it.
That physical anxiety you're feeling is cognitive friction. Your brain has a deeply entrenched event schema for elevators. And violating that script causes distress because the brain suddenly has to spend precious conscious energy figuring out what to do next.
It's forced off autopilot.
Right. And what's fascinating is how these scripts are entirely culturally dependent. In the United States, the event schema for a professional greeting is a firm handshake.
Sure.
But in Tibet, a traditional greeting involves sticking your tongue out at the other person. In Belize, it's bumping fists.
So if I travel to Tibet and confidently stick out my hand, or they stick out their tongue at me, both of our brains experience a total script failure.
Exactly.
The autopilot disengages, and suddenly we have to awkwardly figure out the interaction manually.
The routine shatters, and suddenly the brain is forced to spend heavy caloric energy processing the interaction. This is why traveling to a foreign country is so exhausting.
Yeah.
None of your event schemata work, so your brain is constantly burning energy to navigate basic daily tasks.
That makes total sense. But here's where I want to look at the dark side of this.
Oh, there's definitely a dark side.
These cognitive scripts are obviously helpful for efficiency. I don't want to consciously debate how to stand in an elevator, but what happens when our brain writes a script that's actually harmful?
This is where the study of cognition becomes a matter of life and death, and the textbook highlights a deeply relevant modern danger: texting while driving. Because event schemata are automatic and designed to bypass conscious thought, they're incredibly difficult to rewrite once the brain locks them in.
Let's break down the mechanics of the texting and driving conflict. I'm driving home from work. That is an event schema, right? I get in the car, put the seatbelt on, turn the ignition, and drive. I can do it without thinking.
You execute that driving script effortlessly. But as you are navigating traffic, you hear your phone's ringtone or feel it buzz.
And that auditory cue triggers a secondary schema.
A massively powerful one. The event schema triggered by a buzzing phone involves a deeply ingrained physical routine. Locate the device, unlock the screen, check the notification.
Right.
And this particular schema is fortified by neurochemistry. Every time you check your phone and see a message, your brain receives a microdose of dopamine. So when the phone buzzes in the car, your hand automatically reaches for it.
Even though my conscious mind, like the rational part of my brain, knows it is a terrible idea. I know the statistics. I know looking down at 60 miles an hour endangers lives. But in that split second, logic loses.
Logic loses because the schema bypasses the conscious risk assessment. The textbook cites research by NAFAC from 2013 on this specific phenomenon.
What did they find?
That the physical motion of reaching for the phone is an automatic script. Furthermore, a 2012 study by Bayer and Campbell demonstrated that it's the sheer repetition of the habit that makes it so deadly.
Because we do it all day long.
Exactly. You execute the check phone schema thousands of times a day. In line at the store, on the couch, at your desk. It is a general habit we practice everywhere.
It's exactly like the elevator door. We feel physically compelled to face the door, just like we feel physically compelled to grab the phone. The brain doesn't care about the context in that split second. It just executes the most highly practiced script.
The context is irrelevant to the autopilot. Your brain has practiced the phone script far more often than the driving script. Trying to actively suppress that neural pathway just because you happen to be behind the wheel is an immense cognitive battle.
It's terrifying.
You aren't just fighting distraction. You are fighting your own hardwired cognitive architecture. Psychologists are desperately searching for behavioral interventions to help people interrupt this specific schema, because until the script is forcefully broken, the behavior remains terrifyingly automatic.
Okay, I am going to drop the student persona for a moment because mapping all of this out really shifts how you view your own daily life.
It really does change your perspective.
We started this deep dive by picturing our thoughts as a chaotic, unmanageable tornado. But now the architecture is clear. Your brain is an endlessly active, highly efficient file cabinet.
Organizing the chaos.
Right. It organizes the chaos into concepts. It uses prototypes as quick visual labels to save energy, and it links those concepts together to build these incredibly powerful cognitive scripts. Scripts that quite literally drive our behavior without our permission.
It is a remarkable system of survival and efficiency. The crucial takeaway from exploring this architecture is that awareness is the absolute prerequisite for agency. Yes, becoming aware of how your brain categorizes the world, realizing that your sudden judgment of a stranger might just be a role schema misfiring,
Right.
or recognizing that you are running on a dangerous event schema when you reach for your phone in the car. That awareness is the very first step toward breaking bad habits and thinking more clearly. You cannot rewrite a cognitive script if you don't even know the program is running.
You have to be able to see the code before you can debug the system.
Precisely. As we navigate the world, we have to respect how powerful these mental forces are. Concepts in schemata don't just organize reality, they fundamentally shape our perception of it.
That leaves me with one final, slightly unnerving thought for you, the listener, to chew on as we wrap up.
Oh, let's hear it.
We've spent this entire deep dive exploring how our minds rely heavily on past experiences to build these automatic cognitive scripts. We know the script for an elevator, we know the script for answering a phone, we have natural concepts built from generations of human interaction.
Right, the evolutionary file cabinet.
Exactly. But what happens to our brains as we increasingly interact with entirely novel, non-human entities like artificial intelligence?
That is a fascinating frontier.
When you are chatting with an AI that sounds perfectly human but isn't human, none of our old event schemata actually apply. We don't have a prototype for this.
We really don't.
How is your brain going to write a cognitive script for a relationship with something that doesn't fit into any of the folders we've ever had? It's something to ponder the next time your smart speaker asks how your day was. Until next time, keep diving deep.